Hey everybody, it's Boardman21 and today I'm updating my previous video on armor and protections versus health. There's a few reasons why an update is needed in my opinion. One, I've rewatched my own video and there was a few things I left out and I did not cover other variables that should go into your decision process of what to build towards. Other things such as leech, health regen, and healing, and how those would affect the build, whether you were going for high health, low health, and more protections. Two, even after watching the video, some people are still confused about what it is they should be going for, so that tells me I did not cover it in enough detail. We're going to fix that in this video. Reason three, I only used the werebear as an example, which was a bit biased because of some of the passes it has, and I didn't cover ward at all. So we're going to clarify that up. And four, I see people every day in chat still discussing armor and protections. Is getting health better? Is getting more armor and protections better? And I've seen people saying that getting more health will reduce your percentage of protections, which reduces your overall EHP, and that's just not true. So I really wanted to get started and clarify all of these things up, and with that we're just going to begin with the basics. So beginning with the basics, let's just go over what armor and protections are and what health is. So health is relatively simple. You start out the game with 100 of it, you gain some more, I believe it's around like 7 or 8 health per level that you gain all the way to level 100, and when you run out of it, you're dead. Simple as that. Armor and protections is something that you can get through passives, skill, and gear, and it's not something that you get just for leveling up, so it's something that you have to build into if you want it. Now, there's a formula that they use in this game that separates it from other games, such as Path of Exile, Grim Dawn, all of those other games. And for instance, in Path of Exile, resistances are something that you get on gear or through your skills or passives that just increases it by a set amount, and there's a cap, a maximum amount. Now, one thing that's great about Last Epoch is it doesn't want to do caps at all. Other than Glancing Blow and Critical Strike Avoidance, they don't have very many caps, and what's funny is everyone complains about those two affixes themselves and their caps. So staying away from caps, in my opinion, is some of the greatest things about Last Epoch. With that said, because there is no cap, you can't obviously get to 100%, so they had to use a formula that would make it impossible to do that, and it was a relatively super simple formula that they used, but it's created mass confusion. But it's so simple that once it clicks, and I'm hoping it does in this video, that you will understand it and it will make perfect sense, and you'll just have this, epiphany of complete clarity on what it is. And with that, let's show you this formula. So the formula is that your percentage of damage reduction is going to be based on 1, how much health you have, and 2, how much resistance or protection and armor that you have. So let's just take necrotic. We're going to do our example on necrotic. If I have 0 necrotic and I have 100 health, right now I have 0% protection against necrotic, which means that if I took a 100 damage hit right now, I would die. It would take all 100 of my health because I had no damage reduction. However, if I added in 100 necrotic protection, which we will actually just throw on here, the formula is going to be your health plus your necrotic protection, and then you're going to take your health and you're going to divide it by that number. So what that means is you're going to take your 100 health and you're going to divide it by your health plus your necrotic protection. In this case, it would be 100 divided by 100 plus 100, which would be 200. So it would be 100 divided by 200. Technically, it's 201, but the number you'll get is 50%, which means if I were to take a 100 damage hit right now, that damage would be reduced by 50%, which would leave me with 50 health, and therefore it would take 2 hits to kill me. And this is where a lot of people get confused. If I were to tell you that that same 100 protection, if you went for 100 health instead, it would be the same amount of effective health. And to prove that, I'm going to show you an example of exactly what I mean. So right now, just to reiterate, you have 100 necrotic protection and 100 health, which gives you 50% damage reduction, which means that if you were taking a 100 damage hit, it would take 2 hits, because you would only get 50 damage per hit, to take 100 damage and die. If we swapped down our gear and gave ourselves 100 health instead, here's what the difference would be. Now we have 200 health and we have no necrotic protection. So now let's say we still take that 100 damage hit of necrotic. We have 0 protection, so it's a 100 damage hit, but we have 200 health. So it still takes 2 hits to die. So it is the same amount, even though our percentage of protection has gone down all the way to 0. Okay, so now we've re-equipped our necrotic gear, and we have that 101 necrotic protection and our 100 health for our 50% damage reduction. And this is where I want to clarify with people that just because this percentage goes down because you decide to throw some more health into your build does not mean that you're less survivable. It does not take your toughness down. In fact, it actually makes your EHP go up, even though this percentage goes down. And that's where a lot of people get confused. They say, oh, my damage reduction went down by 10%. That means I'm going to die easier. No, that's not the case at all. So let's just throw some health on here. I'm going to throw on, to make it a nice even 250, we're going to throw on 49 health with that 101 across. So we have 250 together. So you'll see that when I threw on that extra 49 health, that our damage percentage dropped down from 50 to 40%. A lot of people right now going, man, I lost 10% of my damage reduction. I'm going to die easier. No, that's not the case. Now remember, before we put these on, we were sitting at 100 necrotic protection and 100 health, and we had 50% damage reduction. If we took a 100 damage hit, it would take 2 hits to kill us with 100 health. You take 50 damage twice. Now, when you throw the health on there, and now people are like, oh, that 40%. If you took a 100 damage hit right now, you would actually only take 60 of that as damage. You have 149 health. It would take 2.5 hits to kill you. Just because you lost 10% of your damage reduction does not mean that your EHP went down. Your EHP actually went up because you added some health to your build. Percentage went down doesn't mean that you are less tough. So don't be afraid to throw some HP on there. What you are looking for, what is the most important, is that this number, your necrotic resistance actual number, and your health together is a bigger number. Because it's effective health. You essentially have 250 health right now. 149 plus the 101. So all you're looking for in a build is you want to get these numbers and your health number to the highest amount together that you can get. So I'm sure that you've heard the phrase that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and that is exactly what it is with armor and protections. You are only going to be as tough as your lowest protection plus your health. And the reason for that is even if you had 10,000 of all protections except for say poison and you only had 100 poison protection, that 100 poison protection plus your 149 health is going to be your weak spot. A poison spider is going to come in and one-shot you and your run is over. So if you're getting one-shot pretty consistently and you just hate it, look at your armor and protections. Are you getting one-shot with the same element because that's the one that you're lacking in? So for the best build, for the most consistent build that you can get, you want to have pretty much an equal amount of all protections, and you want them to be as high as possible, and you want your health as high as possible. A lot of people will say go low health and go high armor and protections. And yes, that's true. It's if you have a lot of percentage increases like the belt, the chest, the helm, the shield that can give a percentage increase to all armor and protections, it's good to get a good flat base and use all of your suffix slots for that so that you can get as high as possible. But when it comes to other things like your passives, don't be afraid to take some health, because if you take your health in your passives where you can't get elemental protections or you can't get any sort of protections because you got it all in your gear, all of that health that you get, just because it will lower these numbers, you are actually increasing your EHP, and you will be able to take more hits, you'll be able to take a harder one hit, and the one shot that kills you will have to be a much harder one shot, which means you'll have to be farther along in the arena. Alright, so we've covered armor and protections versus health, and we've realized that getting all of it together to get a total amount of effective health is the best way to go. And I hope that you understood a lot of what I was saying. I mean, it really is just as simple as get as much of it as you can. It really is that simple. If you are lacking in one, it is better to lose a little bit overall to bring them all up to an equal amount so that you can survive consistently. Now with that, we're going to go to the opposite side of the spectrum, and that's ward. And the reason I want to bring ward into this is some people on builds are asking, should I go armor and protections or should I do ward? And here's basically what the answer is. If you have nothing that's really going to boost your armor and protections, and we're just going to throw the Lich because it's the easiest example to go in. You could do either of the Mage, you could do the Spellblade or the Sorcerer, but we're going to go off the Lich. The Lich has such an easy time with Soul Feast and Mark of Death granting so much ward that it will always beat out, until it's changed, armor and protection builds on that character. And the reason for that is, if you can stack 50,000 ward, each point of ward is the same as having 1 protection or having 1 health. And 50,000 of it is an amazing number to reach. That's such a high number. You're never going to have 50,000 of each protection, and you're never going to have 50,000 health. But if you have 50,000 ward, that's the equivalent of having 50,000 of those, and that's why it is so OP, and that's also why it's the #1 build on the ladder, is because there's just so much of it that you can get right now. I'm sure that will change in the future, but when you go into a build and you're wondering, should I go ward, should I go armor and protections, what should I do? Just think, what is the highest flat number that I can get to? Can I get more health? Can I get more of all my armor and protections? Can I get more of those two together? Can I get more ward? And here's the thing, a lot of people say if you do a ward build, do not go armor and protections because it's useless. That's not 100% true. Just because you have a whole bunch of armor and protections and you gain a bunch of ward, which makes this percentage go down, that does not make your EHP go down. If you're using Enzanguius and you don't have any health, that's a big losing battle right there, because you're missing such a huge chunk of health that's counting against you in armor protections, that in that case it's probably a bad idea to stack armor protections and ward, just because that huge chunk of your life is working against you. But if you're playing like a sentinel minion, or you're doing, the necromancer, and you're just using your minions to generate ward and you're not using Enzanguius, then having armor and protections is a great thing, because as your ward goes up, yes, your percentage is going to drop, but your overall flat resistances are still going to be the same. They didn't go anywhere, and your ward counts as health. So now you have a lot more health, you'll still have damage reduction, and your overall EHP will go up. So if there's anything to take away from this video, it's just this. It doesn't really matter what you build into, but you want to build into the one that's going to get your resistance, your health, and your ward all to the highest overall point, so that no matter which resistance you get hit with, the weakest one, the lowest total, is still, the higher you can get that number, the more further you'll be able to push the arena, because you will take less damage. Alright, I hope that this has clarified it for you. It is really hard to explain, but it really is simple. I mean, just overall, just the thing you gotta worry about is get the highest number that you can. So I hope if you had questions about your armor and protections versus health versus ward, that this video was able to answer. If not, feel free to leave your question in the comments below. I will answer it to the best of my knowledge. And thanks for watching. If you enjoy the content, feel free to throw on a like, subscribe. There's going to be lots more coming. Again, thanks for watching.